controlled by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Thank you, John Larson. I receive your kind words on behalf of all of our courageous members of the House of Representatives who want the best for the American people. And what we can do that is best for them in the next 24 hours is to pass affordable, accessible health care for all Americans. The best for all Americans is to have 32 million more people to have health insurance in our country. The best for...
Piece of stinking filth.
Shh, say it again, Shali. This is AJ of the InfoWars. Listen to the Shaliak. This is Alex Jones of InfoWars. Listen to Shaliak on the Cold Reality News and Report.
This is the coolest thing I have ever seen.
Well, hello there.
Today on Cold Reality Radio, my guest will be Simon Rush from an organization called Sightlanders out of South Africa. We're going to be talking to him today about a coming civil war and possible genocide in that area of the world, and it seems to be syncing up in a kind of a global agenda of divide and conquer, divide and rule. It is Sunday, July 23rd, at 10:03 on the East Coast of America. We're going to be discussing the history of the African continent, and we're going to try to put all the pieces together, and then hopefully kind of link the past with the present and see how things have gotten to this unfortunate situation that is that's brewing there today. The network is UCY.TV, and the show is Cold Reality Radio on that UCY.TV broadcasting network. Again, my guest today is Simon Rush. He is part of one of the... Let's see here. I want to make sure that I get this right here. It's an emergency plan initiative. I believe he mentioned 800,000 white South Africaners are preparing for this situation. They're an emergency plan initiative officially founded in 2006 to prepare a Protestant Christian South African minority for a coming violent revolution. on their webpage. We are non-aggressive and legal in our preparation, constituted lawfully under the Geneva Convention with particular reference and protocols to 1 and 2 of the protocols additional, or the protection of non-combatant civil Afrikaners, women, children, the elderly, and non-able-bodied in the event of a civil war. Simon, I have you.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Andrew.
Good morning. I hope I did your justice. I'm sure we're going to go over some more, but this is an emergency plan that is being put in place now and has been put in place to protect from violence that seems imminent.
Yes. Yes.
And this was told to you, from what I recall from seeing you over that July 4th weekend. You said that Genocide Watch. Am I correct? When this gentleman from Washington, did he come to Africa, South Africa, and look at the situation there and say, and then he made that statement?
Yeah, that's correct. Dr. Gregory Stanton of Genocide Watch of Washington, D.C., has been to South Africa a couple of times. I've not met him, so I can't tell you exactly how many days he was there and where he went, but he has been there a couple of times. He has met with some of our leaders, Saitlander's organization leaders, and then he placed us on the second to last stage of his genocide measuring system, as it were, the second to last stage before genocide, yes.
Wow. And that's disturbing, to say the least. So to try to put things in the right perspective, how things have gotten to this point, and I want to address Mandela and his effect, why he was there, because from my standpoint here in America, and Simon is in America right now, creating awareness. He made a trip to Pennsylvania to meet with a number of people for this conference, this yearly conference, and his goal is to not only raise awareness, but at the same time, maybe even try to get some financial help to try to secure, through, as I said, the Geneva Convention, the protection of non-combatant civilian Afrikaners there. And so you've been in the States for a little while now. Is this the first time you've been to the States, or have you been here before?
No, I have been to the USA previously. In about 16 years ago, I was here for 10 days in New York, but this has obviously been much longer. We arrived here on the 4th of March, and it's now not too far from the 4th of August, in about a week and a bit. So almost 5 months that I've been here on this trip representing Saitlanders. It's a fundraising tour, fundamentally, Andrew. We had to raise funds for the purchase of vital necessities for civilian non-combatants in the event of a civil war that we believe is imminent, and indeed, which many of our black leaders are now promising the white people of South Africa.
One of the things that you said that really struck me, because when something like this happens, when there is a situation that it's on the verge of violence, and violence has already taken place, it's not like, from what you said about the child and the situation, well, we can save that for to another point of the show, but these things have already taken place. So it's not like you didn't. I guess one of the things that they said here, and I'm going through the Sightlanders webpage, about genocide, it's not like when it happens, it's not as if it just boom, it just happens like that. There are signs, there are different levels of things that occur, which obviously brought the man from Genocide Watch to say you're about probably one and a half of these phases or steps away from this from violence and or genocide. With the numbers, I guess you figure. Now you said there's 800,000 of you there. How many of the of your other white Afrikaners there do not have any clue that this is going on, or just keep saying that no, there's no way that this would happen?
Well, Andrew, I should begin by giving a sense of perspective on those numbers so that I can't be accused of misleading anybody. There are about 55 million human beings in South Africa.
Right.
And of those, the whites comprise approximately 8.5%, around about 4.7 million people. Our organization has a membership just short of 100,000 people. Just under 100,000 people is our organization's membership. And we are preparing a plan, or we have prepared a plan. We are implementing a plan for around about 800,000 to 1 million participants. Now, that includes members, family members, extended, associated, connected people, supporters, and people who are who we know will participate in the plan, but who are maybe not necessarily a part of our membership. And that's just quite important so that everybody is clear and nobody is sort of misled by how the figures are used. We always endeavor to be more honest and more truthful than the people who oppose us. We like to use, as far as possible, the most conservative numbers, and wherever possible, we draw upon liberal sources for our data, so that we're always in a situation where we're very safely conservative with the claims that we make.
Right, and that's very important, because we don't get that. We don't get that from media. We spoke about this for a little while. The only network that I saw anything regarding Sightlanders and what is happening there is on RT, and it was probably about a somewhere between like 3 and 4 minute segment, which most of their segments are, where they introduced Sightlanders and they spoke with a number of people there, and at least RT is saying, hey, there's something happening here, and we're acknowledging it. Okay, you hear none of this. You hear none of this in America. And when we initially when we spoke that night, I told you that my knowledge of what was happening in South Africa, like I was even surprised to hear back in those, my younger years, that there were white people in Africa, because it was like, all right, I would think that it was predominantly just black, and then sure, there's probably a few white people here and there, but it's generally like the home of the African African people, and of course I did hear a number of different things. You watching movies where they try to introduce information into the public domain through, I call it the entrainment through entertainment, where they bring information to you subtly, and they can, whatever the storyline is, they can make a group of people look good, they can make them look bad, they can do whatever. So that was my only understanding of that. And so I just wanted to let you know that initially, because in America, we live in an information bubble where only certain information that we're allowed to hear we get. And then there's other things that are like going on in the Middle East, things going on in Africa. We don't really hear that. We're kept in this little bubble where we don't really get the information that we need to be able to make a decision, in our minds about what's going on in the world. So they largely keep information from us. And then when they want to demonize a group of people or say this group of people is bad, that group of people is bad, then it comes out, and then they start, whether it's beating the war drums or just saying that this group of people is horrible on human rights. This group of people is they're racially this or that. So you understand that. You understand the liberal media, and you fully understand that the omission of information over the years, as you spoke about in a number of different interviews. One that was very striking to me and so informative was the one with Stefan Molyneux, where he broke down the history of how we got to this point today. So I guess in light of that, I'm going to ask you to kind of bring to the forefront the history, to the best of your ability, of South Africa and Africa in general. Another thing that I did throughout the time, through my journey here, is I saw Hotel Rwanda. So that was I guess a form of a documentary of some in some form. It was Don Cheadle was in it, and there was a genocide of a number of between two tribes there. Now this tribal thing's been going on for a number of years with black tribes, kind of fighting against one another for any number of different reasons. So if you want to kind of give a perspective of where, to the best of your knowledge and through your journey there as a South Africaner, bring that to the forefront. Give us an idea of how we got to this point today.
It's a big question, Andrew. This crisis that is now brewing in South Africa has its roots going back many, many years. I think that it's fair to say that the transition to multiracial democracy, which occurred on the 27th of April 1994, did not address many of the expectations in the minds of the black African citizens of South Africa. The African National Congress had been promising black Africans that when they would be in power, black Africans of South Africa would have a sort of a utopia given to them. And that was obviously just another communist exaggeration of how good life could be if only there was a revolution. And those promises have never been remotely fulfilled.
Okay.
With the result that discontent is brewing in South Africa. Now, how they've managed the situation is very, very clever. By they, I mean the government, the African National Congress, the liberals, the black leaders generally. They have, instead of saying we've failed you, what they've said is, if we do this more radically, it will be more successful. So it's sort of like hitting your head against a wall and hurting it. And then your older brother, let's say, says to you, well, if only you would smash your head against the wall harder, the pain will be less.
Okay.
And so it is that they've created a tremendous expectation amongst the black African population of South Africa that if they take white land, which is now the big initiative that is being promoted by some senior black politicians, what they call expropriation without compensation,
okay,
that everybody will be happy. And of course, rational thinkers are saying to them, but then who will provide the food? Who will farm? Who will feed the country? But the people in question can't see that far, either can't see that far or don't want to see that far. If they're in the peasant classes, let's say, let's use Marxist dialectical terms, people in the peasant classes and the working class cannot see that far. It's alien to them. It may as well be over the next hill. They're oblivious to that obvious reality, that if they've got all the land in hand, there will be nobody to produce the food. The governing classes, the black middle class, the quasi-proletariat, if you like, doesn't want, they choose not to see that because it's not convenient to them, because in any massive expropriation of white wealth in this proposed expropriation, in this forthcoming revolution, in this civil war that we are being promised by the black leaders, the people who stand to benefit the most are naturally, as they always are, the black elite.
Right.
It's a bit like the scenario in Zimbabwe where the farms were invaded. Those farms were not then given to the masses. The masses invaded them, and then Robert Mugabe's elites took them, as it were.
Right.
There was no justice of any sort in that exercise. And the same is transpiring in South Africa. It's reached the point now that all sorts of, how can I put this, all sorts of black intelligentsia, black observers, former politicians, former judges, and so on, are all speaking freely about a civil war in South Africa. One of our famous playwrights, a man by the name of Zakes Mda, says that there will be a bloodbath if the African National Congress loses the next election, because they're going to retaliate. They're not going to be willing to relinquish their hold on power. Now, I could give you many, many random examples of similar things being said, but fundamentally, what is occurring is that everybody who is qualified to know whether or not there are civil war preparations transpiring is speaking as if there are civil war preparations transpiring. This is not some sort of white neurosis where we say, oh, all the blacks want to kill us, they don't like us, people should feel sorry for us. This is a scenario in which everybody from the president downwards is speaking about this thing of slaughtering all the whites, as Julius Malema said on the 7th of November last year, of expropriating all white land, of a full revolution, and so on and so forth. It just goes on and on and on and on. So the history, to answer your question in the most direct way possible, the history of this thing is really a history of disappointment, a history of the inability of a Marxist party to keep its own promises, and the history of the redirection of the frustration of the masses towards the enemy. So these Marxists come into power, they make all these promises, they fail as they always do, and then they blame it on somebody else. It's never their fault. They are always the victim.
So the political structure there, which I'm again, it's obviously foreign to me. I don't know how it was built up over the years. The government, what goes on in South Africa, is that what is policy or things that are decided on there? Does that trickle up through the rest of the African continent, or does every one of these different when I look at the map of Africa, I see all the segments and all the different areas of Africa in there, and I look at it like a map of the state of New Jersey, where everything is, the counties are all kind of like blocked off, so you'll see Burlington County or Camden County or something like that. So each one of these areas of Africa, they're called republics. Is that my?
Yes, by and large, yes, that's correct.
So does that political policy that is set down in the South African area, does that trickle up through Africa, or do they have all their own different rules and things like that?
There are 54 countries in Africa. Okay. South Africa is at the southern tip of Africa. In the north of Africa, at the opposite end of Africa, are a number of countries that are much more Arabic in nature than African in nature.
Egypt,
and
yeah.
Here we're talking about Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria.
Right.
And then beneath them, we get into the black African states, particularly the sub-Saharan states, the states, the republics that are south of the Sahara Desert. And there you find that the economies are very, very poorly developed. The influence that those economies have on the global economy tend to be very, very slight, very low. However, to answer your question, the South African economy has a massive influence on the world economy. When I say massive influence, I'm not talking about the size of China or Great Britain or France or the USA or Canada, but a meaningful, manifest influence in the world economy and certainly in the African economy. And I'll illustrate it this way. One province of South Africa, which is smaller than the state of New York, one small province of South Africa, produces 13% of the entire economic output of the entire continent of Africa. So anything that happens in South Africa has a ripple effect through the countries to the north of it.
Sure.
Now, unfortunately, the reverse is true of economic policy. I beg your pardon, of political policy. And what I mean by that is that what has happened to the north has influenced the thinking of black South African leaders. And there is a genuine and sincere conviction that if you do things backwards and upside down, you're going to get world-class results. Now, of course, it sounds facetious and nasty and horrible when a white person says something like that, but it's not my intention at all. I simply mean to say that the economic policies and the political policies, the social policies that have been pursued throughout Africa, which have time and again been rank failures are now still being emulated in South Africa. They make no sense whatsoever to you and me, but to our leaders, they supposedly make a great deal of sense.
Yes. I mean, to give you an example, with Libya, all of the policymakers said, we're going to go in there, we're going to deal with Gaddafi, and then we're going to bring democracy there. When things were, in the most part, going well, he wasn't part of the global economic system, money-wise, and he was really kind of building up South Africa. That's my standpoint. Feel free to counter that if you know something other than what my world view is on that. But I know what their goal was, to go in there to kill him or do whatever they needed to do to him. And then, of course, Benghazi in 2012 happened out of that. They called it a jihadi like wonderland now there. So they say, well, it was a failure. This was a failure. Iraq was a failure. But no, in the grand scheme of things, these are successes. Just to kind of clone what you were saying. These are actually successes that most of the world, if they're not paying attention, they will say, oh yeah, well that's a failure. But in the grand scheme, this is what was intended to happen from the beginning. They just told people that, we're going to free the people there, and then they're going to be able to kind of govern themselves and do this and that. And it couldn't be further from the truth. It's opposite day from everything. It's a 180 degrees from what they said it was going to be. So that apparently, like you're saying, that they keep on doing the same thing as a failure, but then they use that as the blueprint for success.
Yes, that's exactly right. That, I think, is a very pithy way of putting it. They use it as the blueprint for success, even though it has repeatedly failed. It's astonishing. And you know what is equally astonishing, Andrew, is to see the influence of third parties in this thinking. The more closely you scratch at it, the more you realize how heavily the thinking of the principal actors has actually been stimulated by other remote people. So much of the daft political policy that has been practiced throughout Africa didn't originate from within Africa. These are foolish, silly, asinine, inane, almost childlike, puerile pieces of thought that have come from Europe and other places, particularly Europe. But they managed to sell it time and time again, and people managed to fall for it over and over again. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you say you look at the TV. I mean, throughout the years, and most people have gotten all of their worldviews, all of whatever they think they know about World War I, World War II, foreign countries, the Middle East, Africa. The television, the news is real. It's like, I guess they look at it as it's like God speaking to me, because they take it just like that. They take it like this is what's happening, and that's it. If anybody else says anything to the contrary, they're a nutball. They don't. Yes. That's a conspiracy theory, or that's not happening, or this is not happening. And so over the years in Africa, and this was one of these. I have to think that whenever you have an area of the world where people are coexisting, whether it be white or black, be in a place like Syria, where Assad was intermixing all different levels and different types of people. It was like from what I've heard that Jews and Christians and all the different Muslim entities over there were all just kind of coexisting in grand fashion, but then it just it gets Assad, what's he doing? Oh, he's hurting his people, and then you find out that those aren't his people. These are proxies that want to exact regime change. So they're sending proxies over there to stir the pot. And I don't know if this is happening in South Africa, but I have a feeling that it is, and I'm going to get your take on it. With Syria now, they have other plans. They just said, listen, we're going to go in there. We're going to make it look like he's hurting his people. And then we're just going to have this fight, this war, basically, fought by these banker funded jihadi groups. And of course we get a different story on the global news about all these, these Islamic groups that just kind of that grew out of the ground like a plant does, and then now they're just doing all this awful stuff. They're cutting people's heads off. They're doing all these awful things, just by like religious ideology. And then you find out that these groups are being funded by, the U.S. and their allies, and Turkey's involved in it. Saudi Arabia's hip deep in state sponsored terrorism, and then they're calling Qatar terrorists because they're funding. So they're trying to be like, no, it's not us, it's Qatar over there. So the entire system is just corrupt and diseased to the core. And what's happening in South Africa is not surprising that things are going on like this. And one of the things that really stuck out to me when you were talking about it live in Pennsylvania, and then when we spoke on the phone, that this seems to be being manufactured. Someone on the outside wants this civil war to happen, and they're either funding it. I know that I saw that there was weapons. The police or the authorities there are missing so many thousands and thousands of weapons. Mm-hmm. Who's giving that? I mean, you can really kind of make the comparison that, when they talk about Benghazi and they say, well, what happened in Benghazi? Well, from my take, they were shipping weapons to somehow getting these weapons to these jihadi groups that can fight these wars in Iraq and in Syria. And the people that were there, they just knew too much. So that's why the five Americans died there, because they knew too much. They couldn't come back here, and because they wouldn't be able to control the narrative, So what do you think? And I hope that we're moving in the right chronological order here. Who do you think is really kind of throwing gasoline on a fire? The thing that you said was these types of things that happen over years are going to bear fruit for years to come.
Yes.
And so they knew what they were doing. They knew, and the British came in and they started implementing these apartheid, these segregations throughout the years, whereas prior to that, the whites and the blacks in South Africa were coexisting very, very well from what I've heard you describe.
Yes.
So these what do they call them? The provocateurs.
Yes.
These provocateurs follow the money, and you find out that this goes to some of the highest levels of basically the global financial, banks and things like that want to exact societal change. And it's almost ingenious in the way that it's done, because they're say, I just think this grand chessboard, like Brzezinski just died a number of months ago.
Yes.
He wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard, where he's like, this is what we're doing, and this is, basically they'll paint a picture like this is what is organically going to happen, but that can't be further from the truth. It's the hidden hand that's in there saying, this is what we want to happen with Eurasia. This is what we want to happen in Africa, in Libya, in Egypt, with Mubarak a number of years ago getting ousted.
Yes.
The Arab Spring and all those things that were going on, and now with what was it was it 2013 when Mandela died, and so there was a lot of tension and things that were going on around that time. So I'm going in chronological order and trying to kind of keep so that people listening can understand how these things happen. So talk about these provocators, these antagonists, that this civil war is being manipulated. And then also one thing we were talking about, farming and farmers. How many actual farmers have been attacked and killed, and or their plantations destroyed there over the years?
Yes, well, it's a very big question altogether. I mean, yes, the provocateurs, Andrew, our organization was founded by a man by the name of Gustav Müller. He is our leader, our paramount leader, as it were. And he has a strong background in military intelligence, scenario planning, and risk analysis. And this is really his field of expertise. And he would speak to you at length about the hidden hand of influence that these entities, I don't know if you would prefer them to call them the Luciferic consciousness, as David Icke would call them, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, I don't know. It's not my field of expertise. Okay. My field of expertise is in the project management of the implementation of a national emergency plan for Saatlanders as the world's largest non-state civil defense organization to protect women and children, civilian non-combatants, in this forthcoming civil war. I'm not the expert in these subjects. However, it is clear that many of the developments on the road of democracy in Africa have not been from within. They've not been organic. They have been imposed from without. What is the correct name for those forces? I'm not really the expert, but generally within Saatlanders, we refer to them as die Geldmacht, which means the best translation would be the money force or global capital.
The money masters.
The money masters, yes.
Right.
And then we use the term Doringbos, which is thorn bush, which comes from a prophet of our people who lived 100 years ago, who made numerous prophecies about this time, which have come true astonishingly reliably. And the point is that this Doringbos, the term that he made up, which means thorn bush, refers to all of those entities, those people who are assimilated to modern temporal values, those people who have rejected the ancient values of their forefathers, the ancient values of our European Christian cultural paradigmatic tradition. The influence is continuous. we see strange events happen from time to time, which simply can't be explained from within. But as I say, I'm not the expert. What I can answer well is your final question on the number of people who have been murdered. The number of murders of white farmers by black people in South Africa over the past 23 years of democracy is just over 3,500, which makes it, as a proportion, head and shoulders the most dangerous profession in the world today. That is to be a white farmer in South Africa.
Okay. So if this is, and it seems strongly that it is being manipulated externally, and somehow, I mean, guys like Julian Mamela are there who are really kind of stirring the pot. You see, if you go to Sightlanders.org, which is SUIDLANDERS, again, SUIDLANDERS.org, you will see videos there of Mamela. You'll see, I mean, it's a beautiful site as far as breaking down so much of what's happening, quotes from black leaders there. And again, your specialty, which is creating this emergency plan for this unfortunate event that seems so, you know, I mean, I can't even imagine when this does happen. I just can't even imagine the absolute destruction, the destructive nature of it, and hopefully something can come between and intervene somehow, something biblical that can bring people to understand that, you know, we shouldn't be doing this to each other. But there are the provocateurs here in America as well that are, like I mentioned to you, that site. Now, when I say this, I don't mean to like that we shouldn't know what history is.
Yes.
At the same time, we have to understand, and I mentioned the site Lynching in America.
Yes.
And it was created by Google, working with I believe Brian Stevenson, a black man who was a lawyer. Or is a lawyer, and he's working to help people, black people who have been unjustly incarcerated, to, you know, use his legal strength and his education to be able to help people, which is great. I mean, I think that's probably one of the greatest things that you can do for anyone, is the support, especially in this criminal legal system that America. You know, we claim to have the best system in the world, but it's really there to protect the John McCain's and the politicians in the deep state. But so when you go through this whole thing, you see that this lynching in America, it's bringing back visually these racial crimes. But I don't truly believe that it's. I believe some of it is from the heart, but I also believe that you can bring tensions, again, these fruits, these things that bear fruits for years to come. This is like at the worst time in America with the Black Lives Matter. We just had in Minneapolis. We just had a woman from Australia who was shot and killed, and she was the one that called to report that there was some kind of somebody was screaming, somebody was being attacked, and then she gets shot and in the abdomen and dies. So we have all these, which I totally believe, these provocateurs, these elements and these minions of the left that are stirring not only a race war here, but eventually there's so many different levels of it, but also a civil war. And even on the site here, there's on the Sightlander site, it says the future of the West. And then there's a video there of what's going on in the countries. And I want to point out that when this whole Libya thing took place, and we went in there and we liberated, right, which was total BS, liberating this country from Gaddafi. These refugees or these displaced human beings, they could have went left, they could have went right into Egypt, but there's organizations that the UN that are assisting these, helping people, but they're bringing them into Europe, into Germany and Italy and a lot of these other. And this is a concerted effort to create a migrant crisis, and I believe that they wanted to create this migrant crisis well in advance.
Yes,
so what I'm pointing out is that here's the hidden hand that's bringing that. So you got in Syria, they create this so-called civil war, which wasn't even a civil war. It was just, we're exacting regime change. And this was pointed out by Wesley Clark in 2007, 2008, that America, he found out after 9/11 that America was going to go into an exact regime change in 7 countries in 5 years. So there is the hidden hand right there, and we see it this coming to fruition. And so all this, what is happening is chaos is being created just worldwide. It's being manufactured like it's being manufactured in South Africa today.
That's correct. I agree very strongly with you, Andrew.
So with 3,500 farmers being basically their ability to create food, that not happening anymore, why would someone, again, and I hope this is a good question. Why would someone that relies on that food try to destroy the flow of that food? To affect you guys, to affect South Africa? Because, I mean, like you said before, food that is created down in South Africa, farmed food, goes up and trickles up through the rest of Africa. Is that, like you said?
Yes.
Right. So is this, at the end of this, whoever is manufacturing this, I think their attempt is to kind of starve people out in general, like divide and conquer people, and then after the conflict happens, then no food, no sustenance. Now that might be further down the line, or of the plan and the things that you're building there for protection. Do you obviously you're thinking about prior to this, and then what to do when it breaks out. And definitely we want to shed more light on that as well. What do you think that the goal is of these manipulators? I mean, post that, we just cover that, and then we can get back to some of the other history of South Africa that brought us to this point.
I don't know, Andrew. I don't know what is their ultimate goal, but it does sometimes seem as if the explanations offered by the most radical conspiracy theorists are also the only explanations that make sense. You know, I don't want to go down a deep rabbit hole and sound like a neurotic or a hysteric or somebody who is trying too hard to desperately find explanations for things that they don't understand. But it does sometimes seem as if the only explanations that make sense are the most conspiratorial ones, as if there's some utter destruction that is being aimed at. Very few other explanations make any sense in the end. This is the difficulty that we have. But I myself choose to focus on the here and the now within my limited capacity. and to keep my attention firmly fixed on the goals and objectives that we as human beings, as white South Africans, have to achieve if we're ever going to prepare for this civil war as well as we possibly can.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine what this must be like to know that a war is coming, and to have it so close to being, like you've been told by or what was reported by Genocide Watch. We see that happening here, and then of course on the site it says the future of the West. This is what it looks like is going to happen as well. We see what's going on in Germany and Sweden and a lot of these other places that have taken on incredible migrations. And so let's at this point, what do you think is most important? Because people have again, in America, they have this information that has been given to them in a bubble. It's almost like only certain information gets in. So if, when they're thinking about South Africa, they've, how would they, they're going to already have this preconceived, already installed worldview about Africa and South Africa. What can be said to again to bring to this point, because most people have no history of Africa and how it came to be and how the Boer Wars and things like that. So what do you think the best effective direction for our conversation to? I'll let you kind of steer it to what you think is the most important path for people to understand.
Sorry, Andrew. Just to be clear, do we have 3 minutes left? This is an hour.
No, we're 2. We have about another hour to go, so you were good.
Yes. The best direction to steer the conversation in. I think that if people are interested in this matter, the best favor they can do for themselves is to visit our website, Suidlanders.org, SUIDLANDERS.org. Because that provides a good introduction to some of the foundational knowledge required to understand what is really happening in South Africa, rather than what the media, the mainstream media, would like you to believe is happening in South Africa. The problem with much of what is going on in the world today, or the problem with the relationship between the people of the world, the consumers of the world, particularly in the West, and the crises that are happening all around them, is that they have a completely false idea of what is occurring. Every time there is a crisis in the West, the mainstream media tells them that it's just the opposite of what's really happening. And the best thing to do is find the best news sources, such as this program. Go to the best news sources. Otherwise, you will be lied to by ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, BBC, Sky News, and so on, nonstop for the rest of your life.
And so the information about as Simon said, you can find more on Suidlanders.org. Again, SUIDLANDERS.org. There's any number of different segments of the webpage. so you can see what's going on there, and then realizing the magnitude of this, and then correlating that with the fact that nothing, I've heard nothing about this until I met you, 2+ weeks ago. There was really there's really no way of knowing what's going on in Africa, but to do some research. And most Americans just, unfortunately, and hopefully we can definitely raise awareness. And your trip here, that I'm sure you're gonna be in the States for quite some time. Putting this information out, visiting different groups, and so that's the thing. A lot of Americans just don't do any research. There's just a constant distraction, whether it be sports, whether it be just the next latest movie that's coming out. People like to be entertained. They want to hear about, they'd rather hear lies, comforting lies, than uncomfortable truth. And I think that this is an absolute, this is devastating, and that's why I wanted to have you on the program. So let me see. All right.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that I can't do more than an hour, but I'd love to come on again. I'd be very pleased to have another chat with you.
Absolutely.
And if people are interested in hearing what we have to say, they're welcome to get in touch with me. My telephone number in the USA is 386-274-8199. Just to tack on to those last comments that you were making there, Andrew.
So yeah, feel free to contact Simon, and again, definitely go to the sightlanders.org and see what's going on in the world, and if you can make a donation or any of any type to their organization. This is definitely, I can't even wrap my mind around how we've gotten to this point with just so much, there's just so much hatred in the world, so much division, and how we got to this point. I just, I'm not a religious person, but I pray and hope for some kind of intervention, some kind of just something to intervene all of this crazy, and just say we got to stop. We got to stop letting the news, what the things that they say to exacerbate and divide people, and then we have to look at what they're not. They're, or say the sins of omission. That things that just don't get reported, like America's, there's nothing being reported about what's going on in South Africa at this time. Simon, I'll be in touch with you, and you're more than welcome to be on here anytime. And Godspeed, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Have a great day.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
That was Simon Roche from sightlanders.org. And it's so baffling. It's so baffling to me that so many horrible things can be going on in the world, and we've just kind of been reduced to, this is just what happens. This is just why, they just take it like it's an organic, just demolition of humanity. And that is ultimately, I believe, what the people that are stirring the pot, the provocateurs, the incredibly wealthy ne'er-do-wells that just want to create division and divide, throughout the entire, human plantation, if you will. And so one thing that I wanted to play here is a clip from the Sightlanders webpage, The Coming Revolution. Quote, "A genocide never happens as a surprise. Never." Tharsis Karugama, the Minister of Justice in Rwanda. And of course, the movie Hotel Rwanda was a movie that kind of brought this to. Now I saw it, but I did not have obviously the worldview at that time to be able to understand or do any other research on it. It wasn't what I was doing back then. But obviously now I would like to go back and try to find out, how this happened, how these two tribes, groups, if you will, in Africa decided to, or one of them just decided that this other group was coming to kill them, or they were obviously being manipulated. They were obviously being pushed in that direction to then cause a genocide of black people. So ultimately, if you can get a group of people to do that to a group of black people to do that to another group of black people, strictly on an ideological platform, and then never really finding out, like, again, I don't know how much that it was looked at, because obviously, did the U.S. intervene in this happening? No. But did the U.S. intervene when they wanted to go into Libya? And they created the environment to then go in and say that Gaddafi and or Assad in Syria is killing his own people, he's strafing his own people, and from that point forward, does it even matter why? We look at this migrant crisis, and the most of why Americans don't really focus on any of this stuff is because they're just too busy to care, or they just don't care, or if somebody's bringing them information that is uncomfortable, they will just tune out. They just tune out. They don't really care. But the future of the West is definitely migration. Obama opened up was there really any kind of border gate or wall there of any kind of? No, and there never will be. Okay, there never will. And if it is, it's going to be used to keep you in. Well, it's going to be keeping out to a certain extent, but the equal and opposite reaction is that it's going to keep Americans in, so that you're part of the game. So let's. We've got. I'll play a short clip here. Oh. I take you back to one of our top stories. Give me 1 second. I forgot one wire. All right, here we go. Actually, it was a nice clip. This was about 10, 11 minutes.
All right, let's take you back to one of our top stories. EFF leader Julius Malema expected to appear in the Newcastle Magistrates Court later this morning. However, what we saw earlier, from much earlier this morning, were visuals of just EFF supporters outside the court. However, in the last few minutes, we've now seen the yellow and green of ANC supporters arriving outside court. Well, what does this all mean? Let's take you live now again to my colleague, Oli Mgambi, who joins us on the telephone this time. Oli, hello to you. What do you read into this? Why do we have ANC supporters outside court where Julius Malema is going to appear?
Well, Gareth, it's very interesting that you've picked up on that point. In fact, I've counted quite a number of ANC supporters who are wearing the T-shirt of the ANC with the face of President Jacob Zuma embedded on it. And I asked one of them, actually, Gareth, just before I came on air, and I'm about to tweet that video, by the way. I said to them, why are you here? Are you here to disrupt? Are you here to support the cause of the EFF here as they come to support their leader? And they say, we are here harmoniously. We're here to also support the leader of the EFF because he is fighting the cause of landless people, and we are among those who are landless.
You are committing a crime. You know why? Because you are taking a white man's land. You are taking the land, and this land belongs to Mlungu. So we must protect the Europeans against the non-Europeans. That's why we are called here. Because no one must disturb the peace of white people. Who are you to disturb the peace of white people? How do you disturb the peace of white people? Because you want to take the land of white people, and the ANC shall punish you for disturbing the peace of white people, because white people are untouchable. White people, they are from heaven. No one dares touch white people. You touch a white person, you will go to jail. You must ask Mandela. You must ask Bukwe. You must ask Steve Biko. They've not done anything wrong except to disturb the peace of a white man. So black people, you are subjects of white people. Even under ANC, even under the so-called democracy, you are subjects, you are servants of white people. No white man will be served by me. I do not serve white masters. I will never serve white masters. I'm here to disturb a white man's peace. You are right. The white man has been too comfortable for too long. We are here unashamedly to disturb the white man's peace. Because we have never known peace. We don't know what peace looks like. They've been living peacefully. They've been swimming in a pool of privilege. They've been enjoying themselves because they always owned our land. We, the rightful owners, our peace was disturbed by white men's arrival here. They committed a black genocide. They killed our people during land dispossession. Today we are told don't disturb them. Even when they disturbed our peace, they found peaceful Africans here. They killed them. They slaughtered them like animals. We are not calling for the slaughtering of white people, at least for now. What we are calling for is for peaceful occupation of the land. And we don't owe anyone apology about that. And we are not going to tell the court that we are not disturbing the peace. We are going to tell the court we are disturbing the peace. That's what revolution is about. Revolution is about making those who are comfortable uncomfortable. That's what the revolution is about. Hey, stupid, if you didn't know what revolution is about, today we gave you a free lecture. Revolution is about disturbing the peace of those who are swimming in a peaceful environment through exploitation of the working class. So we are making the comfortable uncomfortable. That's what revolution is about. You must thank this court because this has turned into a workshop. Now you know what revolution is about. It's about making those who are comfortable uncomfortable and those who are uncomfortable comfortable. You are uncomfortable. We want to make you comfortable in your own country, in your own land. This belongs to you. No amount of intimidation will silence us. No amount of prison will silence us. Not even torture, not even anything can tell us to keep quiet about the land. Every time we are fighting with Zuma, these white fellows, they are clapping hands. They think we've forgotten what is our strategic objective. Zuma is not our strategic objective. Our strategic objective is the defeat of white monopoly capital. And that defeat of white monopoly capital means the ownership of property must change and be transferred into the hands of the people. The mines must be nationalized. The banks must be nationalized. The land must be expropriated without compensation. That's what we are talking about. Zuma is a by the way. So white men, before you clap hands for EFF, you must think twice. It's like when we travel in a car and we get a puncture, we stop and fix the tire, but the journey continues. What is the journey? The defeat of white monopoly capital, the defeat of the Rupes, the defeat of the Oppenheimers. We want Newcastle owned by black people. We will not chase white people to the sea. We will give them potion. This is our cycle of piece by piece. That's where you stay. And you can't own bigger than us. You are a visitor. Visitors must behave. They must know that the land belongs to the people of South Africa, the indigenous people of South Africa.
That was Julian Mamela.
Here in Rwanda, more than 800,000 men, women, and children were killed over the course of 3 months. It is the will and not the way that is critical. In Rwanda, the Hutu leaders did what all genocidal leaders do. They tapped into the prejudices and beliefs that people already held. Generations of Hutu had grown up being taught that the Tutsi are dangerous and inhuman. Beliefs that people already held. Generations of Hutu had grown up being taught that the Tutsi are dangerous and inhuman.
Said the killers. Hold on a second. The killers didn't think of the victims as human. Or they wouldn't have killed them. I include myself in this. Like many others, I did not think of them as human beings.
It was easy to mobilize Hutu for the killing.
nuko abatutsi bagiye gutegeka abahutu.
People were saying that Tutsi are going to rule the Hutu again. Who are these people that were saying this?
Nuko abatutsi bagiye gutegeka abahutu. Ko n'ubundi
and that they had colonized us before.
Now
that they are going to come back and make us slaves again, make us work for them. So, I mean, these are again, these black, different black groups, these tribes being divided, and then a large portion of the one side who obviously took the most casualties. How could they have been that powerful to even enslave or colonize? They lied. They were lied to. There were these meetings, and we all participated. They took place at different schools, and a lot of people came. They told us the plan: organize patrols, stop the enemy, block all intersections, so that anyone trying to escape will be stopped and killed. After we left the meeting, we went to the place where many people would pass. We stopped them. Some of them managed to run away. Some were stopped, and others. So the plan was put into action from the moment the authorities said so.
Once people had stepped beyond the first step of actually killing, throwing a child down and hacking them to death, opening the womb of pregnant, there's nothing that was left that they couldn't do. Because they were being told by the politicians who are giving them the alcohol that if you don't destroy these people, these animals, they are coming to finish you. None of you will survive. And they had been made to believe it. I don't want to give an excuse for them. They were willing killers, there's no doubt in my mind. But see, at the back of their mind, the radio is telling them they are coming to finish you. If you don't kill them yourselves, their plan is to finish you.
And that was
them yourselves. They are
Tharsis Karugarama on the genocide, the Rwandan genocide.
Plan is to finish you.
So what was the key there? The politicians were telling them that if something wasn't done, that they would go. And then, of course, the people. I mean, there's no doubt that there was a collusion on both sides. Whoever the leaders were, there was a collusion on both sides to get this, to get the killing to start, to get the, the genocide underway. Now, just recently, within probably like the last 2 years, or probably around 2 years left in Obama's, presidency, George Washington's cousin, Barry Dunham, he invited a lot of these African leaders to the White House. And they came and they were dressed in a lot of like really fantastical garb, Now these are the people that these are the black leaders that are funded by. Okay, so this Mamela guy talking about this Julian Mamela, who is the leader now, the guy who's going to come in to trigger the next genocide, which is hopefully not going to be the Simon's family and their community there. But you have these black leaders that come in, and you know that they're being manipulated by the hidden hand that obviously Simon it was not his specialty to go into. He mentioned the name of this other guy there who had the conspiratorial knowledge and the things like that really can put the pieces together. And so these black leaders are paid to oppress their own. They're paid and put in power to oppress their own people. So instead of Mamela looking at that and saying, these are these leaders or these so-called leaders, or maybe he's in connection with them, you never know. They seem to have a massive gripe with the white South Africaners there. And once the British came in and created this the apartheid blueprint of segregation. Now, I'm sure there was a large portion of white South Africaners there, again, that were living with, the indigenous, and they were fine. In one of the interviews, there was the largest hospital ever built. I mean, one of the largest hospitals ever built anywhere was built in the southern regions of Africa. And so there is now that's kind of a good thing as far as having those levels of care available to you. At the same time, medicine and a lot of these ideologies, these so-called health ideologies, have been weaponized. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. So the fruits of these communist manipulations, very obviously, the British. These things have been going on for a long time. And then, of course, you've got Mandela, and now Simon didn't shed any light on that. Maybe he wanted to justifiably maybe stay away from that topic, because again, in America, people think that Mandela was this this hero that fought the white people. Winnie Mandela. Again, not the heroes, not the humanitarians that they were made out to be. And in the West, you'll find that if someone's being praised, well, we'll start with this. If someone's being demonized, chances are they're probably trying to do something good. But if you do something good and you're very powerful, like John Lennon, he was a very, very powerful man from the system the Beatles, the entrainment through the entertainment. The Beatles were very, very integral in the development of the societal development, the social engineering of not only teenagers and people in the UK, but also in America. Thus, the response when they got off the plane to Rock Jam for America. But John Lennon, very, very powerful, very influential. And when he started talking about the maniacs and the insane that were guiding people and deceiving people, you know, being a very creative young man, musicians are usually very creative, and of course, you see the war. There was many things going on in the world, wars, Vietnam, Korea, all these different conflicts that never ever should have happened. The hidden hand of at that time, Lyndon B. Johnson having part in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Because, of course, John F. Kennedy, among other things, wanted to end the war, wanted to change things around. He understood that there were nefarious, corrosive elements in Washington. And then when he found that a lot of these different endeavors were being funded by the Congress was funded or funding through the Federal Reserve Bank, which is part of government. It is not its own entity like a lot of misinformed conspiracy people have been led to believe that it's a separate bank from government. It's not. Clint was on the program over the last couple of years and mentioned this, did a segment, I'm sure, with me. I think it was me and Patrick, or Patrick and I, where he points out that the Federal Reserve Bank is government. It's not this bank that is outside and disconnected from Washington, D.C. No, these are false pieces of information that lead people astray, which is what they're meant to do. And so, getting back to Mandela, not like a super awesome guy. He was praised when he died. And I heard for a number of years, Mandela, not the super awesome guy that he was portrayed as. And let's see. What's this? Shaka Zazula says, or Walter Zazula says, there is a race war in South Africa. It's 364 years old. Though we agreed to a ceasefire 22 years ago, we are agreeing to open fire again. Now that was Shaka Sisulu, the grandson of Walter Sisulu. We have author R.W. Johnson, How Long Will South Africa Survive? The Looming Crisis. On many university campuses, there is a frankly anti-white frenzy. What are we seeing with that college? No white people are allowed to come that day. So this is orchestrated. This is a continuity of agenda. We have seen delighted declarations that whiteness is burning when valuable pictures are torched. R.W. Johnson, political commentator and writer. That was in 2016. Julius Mamela. We think this government has no respect for human rights, and that is why we are moving with abnormal speed to pull out of the ICC so that they can do all sorts of human rights violations without anybody holding them accountable. Former South African President Thabo Mbeki said, I have argued that our country is immersed in a general crisis. Fortunately, we have not yet arrived at a tipping point when the country becomes ungovernable, with disastrous consequences for white and black, rich and poor, and young and old alike. Retired Constitutional Court Judge Bernard Ngope said, I think road rage between black and white could lead to civil war in this country. If you look at what is happening in this country. Dan H. Simpson, former U.S. ambassador to CAR, Somalia, and DRC. He says, quote, 3 of Africa's keystone countries, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, and South Africa are showing signs of distress when the world is already overloaded with crisis and unwilling or unable to come to their aid. South Africa is the most serious of the 3 pending African crises, largely because the stakes are so high for Africa and the world. And that was, a lot of these comments were made in 2016, late 2016. And here's Trump saying, I really like Nelson Mandela, but South Africa is a crime-ridden mess that is just waiting to explode. Not a good situation for the people. That was 2013. And, right, as I have long been saying, South Africa is a total and very dangerous mess. Just watch the evening news when not talking weather. University of Pretoria. South Africa is in a very dark place. We have lost that moral high ground that we used to occupy. People in the ANC are beginning to understand the gravity of the crisis that the country is in. And that was Prince Marshall, political analyst. And then Winnie Mandela, some called an actual, just a brutal, brutal killer. We cannot pretend like South Africa is not in crisis. Our country is in crisis, and anyone who can see that is just bluffing themselves. Jacob Zuma said, the president right now, as a matter of fact, we are moving, things are bad in the country, we are moving in another direction. So again, if you go to the Sightlander site, you can kind of see what's happening there. And there's a water crisis there, as is going to happen here very shortly, very, very soon. Electricity is there is more than a 50% chance the country's energy grid will suffer a total collapse. Unemployment. Their mining, South Africa's key mining industry is at risk of collapse due to political unrest and labor instability. Economy. South Africa's Reserve Bank Governor Kganyago, this spells disaster, the 0% growth for 2016. Crime, illegal firearms. Now I think it was like 6,600 weapons have disappeared, have been lost and or stolen. And I mean, I can't even imagine what that would be like. I mean, I know it's going to happen here for sure, because the plan is to overwhelm the system. Plan is to overwhelm. And what do? We look at a lot of these. Different situations, and again, we think, this is just, as I said before, this is just humanity, destroying itself, or is it just a small portion of society? And they'll say, why would they do this? Why would they create this divide that leads to genocide and civil war? Why would they do it? Because they are just the worst form of life that could ever be. And I think that's what is happening as far as the blueprint for the destruction of everything through the continuity of agenda. It's continuity of agenda. All right, so let's see what's going on in other areas here. Horror, 8 illegals found dead at Walmart. Human trafficking nightmare jolts Texas. Let's see here. Eight found dead in sweltering tractor trailer outside San Antonio. Here. Got Congress reaches 200 days with Obamacare and massive taxes still in place. Dems plan to rebrand it the Better Deal. Let's see. Let's get over to Blacklisted. EU sounds alarms over new U.S. sanctions on Russia. Germany threatens retaliation. Late on Friday, congressional negotiators, conspirators, worthless assholes reached a deal to advance a bill that would punish Russia for its interference in the 2016 election and restrict the president's power to remove sanctions on Moscow, according to the Wall Street Journal. The measure, if signed into law, would also give Congress veto powers to block any easing of Russian sanctions by the president. And while it remained unclear if President Donald Trump would sign the bill if it reaches his desk, which is now likely, the loudest complaint about the bill so far has emerged from the EU, which has once again urged U.S. lawmakers to coordinate their anti-Russia actions with European partners. Yemeni forces strike Saudi oil refinery with long-range ballistic missile in retaliation for Saudi's ongoing aggression against Yemen, which Trump gave them more money to be able to kill and pillage Yemen. The Yemeni forces have targeted an Aramco Saudi oil refinery in Yanbu province with a long-range ballistic missile. The Saudi-led coalition tend to order anywhere from 20 to 70 airstrikes against various Yemeni provinces on any given day. Any province under control of Yemen's popular forces is fair game. So that continues. Facial recognition surveillance is here, but privacy protections are not. Assange, in one of his reports, says the CIA not only armed Syria's insurgents, it paid their salaries. Assange is continuing his attempt to take down America any way he can by accurately reporting the truth. Saturday on Twitter, Assange highlighted an article from Thursday where the Financial Times noted how many Syrian rebels are getting salaries from the CIA. Bolivia's president declares total independence from World Bank and IMF. It's usually a death sentence. Bolivia's president, Evo Morales, has been highlighting his government's independence from international money lending organizations and their detrimental impact, and how their detrimental impact impacts the nation. Telesur TV reported a day like today in 1944 ended Bretton Woods Economic Conference, in which the IMF and World Bank were established, Morales tweeted. These organizations dictated the economic fate of Bolivia and the world. Today, we can say that we have total independence of them. They'll be one of the, they'll be added to the axis of evil soon, if this is not all just bullshit. And Trump's Department of Justice prepares to crack down on marijuana users and growers. Trump administration is readying for a crackdown on marijuana users under Jeff Sessions. President Trump's task force on crime reduction and public safety, led by Sessions, is expected to release a report next week that criminal justice reform advocates fear will link marijuana to violent crime and recommend tougher sentences for those caught growing, selling, and smoking the plant. The National Health Service to ban homeopathy and herbal medicine as a misuse of resources. The public rightly expects that the NHS will use every pound wisely, and today we are taking practical action to free up funding to better spend on modern drugs and treatments. They're blowing the pharmaceutical companies. Health officials said that the NHS is spending around 545 pounds or whatever. No, it's actually a bigger number. It's a lot of money. 545, and that's an English, British pound amounts. I'm sure in the millions. A year on treatments, which are available over the counter. They do not expect to recoup all the funding. Mexican drug war, 2,234 murders in June, the country's deadliest month in at least 20 years. Botched U.S. drone strike kills 15 Afghan police. CIA chief warns of WikiLeaks plotting to take down America any way they can. Wisconsin company to implant microchips in employees. Moscow and Baghdad sign huge arms deals. Two Baltimore detectives plead guilty to armed robberies and fraud. Innocent man sentenced to prison for standing on a sidewalk, informing people of their rights. Palestinians and Israelis killed, hundreds wounded as violence engulfs the West Bank. 3 Palestinians were shot dead and 4 others wounded as thousands of Palestinian worshippers clashed with security forces on a day of rage over Israeli control of Islam's third holiest site. Israelis, a family of 3 Israeli settlers were stabbed to death, and a 4th were wounded in the West Bank settlement of Neve Suf on Friday. Wall Street Journal editorial writer found dead, Joseph Rago, Pulitzer Prize winning editorial writer, 34 years old. I wonder what he was writing about. Broke and bleeding cash. The DNC ends June with $3.3 million in debt. and not to mention their moral bankruptcy. UK military will use artificial intelligence lasers to expand Britain's economic empire. The government owns all your children. The state is deciding who's fit to be parents, keeping parents from treating their sick kids, and arresting parents if their kids skip school. Oh, but don't worry about that smart device in the home. All that info is it's collecting on your kids could never fall into the wrong hands. PepsiCo, Unilever, and Nestle accused of complicity in illegal rainforest destruction. Palm oil plantations on illegally deforested land in Sumatra. RT had any number of documents on there how these corporations are just raping and pillaging all of the resources. 5 weird conspiracy theories from CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Should be interesting. Germany freezes arms shipments to Turkey after warning its citizens against travel to Turkey. Meet Trump's pick for FBI Director Chris Wray. He's bipartisan. That you can find those stories over at blacklistednews.com. U.S. lawmakers support bill that would make it illegal to boycott goods and services from Israel. First of its kind food sovereignty law just legalized local food trade without the government. Maine has taken a bold step toward freedom, becoming the first state in the U.S. to enact a food sovereignty law giving communities power to regulate their local food economy. If that is true and it's on the up and up, that's incredible. And something tells me it might not be what they're saying. What we got here? U.S. Tells citizens in North Korea to depart immediately, bans all travel to country. All right, so let the world war go into the next gear. Cops find 5-year-old girl for having a lemonade stand. Murder, spies, and weapons. 3 fascinating deep state stories. Sean Spicer resigns as White House press secretary. Scaramucci comes in. Pentagon dumps $65 million into mind control project with DARPA. Chomsky said Trump is a distraction used by the deep state to systematically destroy America. Now, I don't know that I can say that that's bullshit, but it's there's a lot of truth to that. Well, thanks for joining us today. I'd like to thank Simon Rush for being on with us.
One holistic system of systems. I will MK Ultra ya. Put the MK scope on ya. If the MK hits you, it's guaranteed to open ya. The 57mm Mark 110, 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list, that's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum, some perform Shakana on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary for the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran that's enriched, that's a bitch.